So let's look at some failures. As I mentioned, DVD security failures. The master key was compromised. One vendor accidentally, or not accidentally, leaked the key out. And once one vendor leaked it out, everybody had it. The entire thing had a very large negative return on investment. Peripherals and medical devices have been cloned. A lot of networking equipment as well. A lot of clones have been coming off from offshore, and the reason is that the security level was not effective. There was no business case. So until people started getting cloned, people didn't start investing money in deploying security. There was no business case for it. In addition, another major failure was the Boston MyFair system was hacked. Now it turns out they made a conscious choice to use a lower grade security technology to lower their costs. And what actually happened in this case was there was a lot of publicity around this thing being hacked. Well, it turns out the hack wasn't quite that bad because it was not a scalable hack. You could hack into this system, but in order to take advantage of it, you would need a large piece of equipment to replicate these tickets. And the idea there was, well, in the press it appears as though they got hacked, but it turns out their decision was not unreasonable. And so you really need to focus on what is it about the security that is a problem. Is it the technology? Is it a system? And many times you make a conscious decision to spend a little bit of money on security for something that has a low value, and you make a conscious decision to spend more money on security for something that has a high value. So it's really important to really understand what is the true financial impact. Now we get to the most difficult part, the management of security. So in a development life cycle, typically you're going to start off with a business case. And in the case of security is, for example, one of our customers, they were losing 30 to 40% of their revenue on their peripherals from clones. You have a pretty strong business case from that if you have enough volume. Now what you would do is you would do a risk analysis. What is it about our business, about our technology that can be compromised easily, and what are some of the security measures we can put in place? If you go back to the analogy where we had secure boot, we had a secure ROM, and we had various metal boxes we can put around these things, we could put a security guard in place. What are the different things that at the system level, we're not talking about, am I going to use RSA 1024 or RSA 2048. We're talking about at a system level, what are the different levers on a business and technology level that I can use to try to reduce my risk of failure? And the ultimate decision is a financial decision. And now the easy part comes. Once I've decided the technologies that I want to deploy and the kind of design I need in my system and how I'm going to measure failures and the business processes I'm going to put in place, I can begin to train people and design prototypes. This is what SDKs are for. And then finally, what I need to do is once I go into production, something that you really need to consider is that once I put my solution in place, I need a provisioning process. If I'm going to be using certificates, I need a process to issue those certificates and to make sure the certificates are only issued to authorized parties into authorized devices. Traditionally, a lot of PKI solutions have been used to issue VPN tokens. They were issuing security for people. They did not directly impact your revenue. But when you talk about device security, you're directly impacting your revenue. Every certificate you issue to a $1,000 peripheral is worth $1,000, right to the bottom line, right to the CEO, right to the board level. And unfortunately, what happens is the most important step is the business case and the risk analysis. We make money doing security implementations, but the most important part of security is making sure that the money you're spending on security is being well spent. And it's very common for a lot of customers to focus right into the security technologies. I cannot emphasize this enough, that understanding the business case, viewing security as a financial decision is the most important point that I'm trying to make in this presentation. And I cannot emphasize that enough. So now let's get into some of the challenges at the management level. What is your security objective? As I mentioned before, your objective is not to be more secure. Your objective is not to deploy security technology. Your objective is to save money or save lives. So let's look at the complexity of that. First, in terms of the lowest level of security, it's very common. The most common objective for security is for compliance or marketing parity. An example would be, in order to get into the market, in order to have a voting machine that you deploy into the market, you have to reach a minimum level of security. And the regulatory agency run by the government is going to tell you the minimal level of security you need to comply. And a lot of folks are focused on that. Another example would be biometrics. Biometrics actually reduce security. And the reason is, for example, that if you swipe your finger with a biometric and it fails, a lot of times you have what's called a backdoor. You can put in your password instead of security. So the problem there is that the security of your fingerprint does not actually improve security. It may appear that it does. The illusion of security is being created, but in reality, you have reduced security because you now have two ways to get into your system. One is your password, and the other one is your fingerprint. If I explain this to you, it becomes obvious, but it's not obvious if you're really excited about the technology. We work with a lot of customers that are really focused on compliance and marketing parity. And if that's your business objective, and you explain that, and you're not in denial about that, we have no problem working with you on that. That makes a lot of sense. A lot of people do that. The second level of objective would be at a higher level of security. It's very common for folks to deploy security to reduce or divert liability. We want to put something in place. So for example, if there's a problem and somebody comes to sue us, what's going to happen is we have something in place. It's more of a legal issue. We generally try to avoid working in that scenario, as we recommend that people do. The other one would be revenue assurance. And this is the most common area that we work in. We have customers who have been hacked. They've lost 30% of their revenue. They don't care about the technology. The CEO, the board of directors, wants to make sure that they're not being clawed. They want to protect their intellectual property. They're driven by return on investment. They've been hacked before. The board level's really managing this at an enterprise level. And in many cases, they have a high enough volume where even if they're going to spend money on the security technology, it's going to be worth it because 30% of their revenue is a very large number. And finally, we also work with folks where failure is not an option. We're talking about saving lives. And in this case, when you work with folks in the military, Department of Defense, you generally get people who are really, really dedicated to ensuring that security is done properly because they understand the importance of saving lives. So it's very important in summary here to really understand what are my true security objectives. And the warning is that it's very often that management will not make this clear because the business case is not clear. This is the biggest challenge in security. If you want a higher level of security, it's going to cost you more money. And the benefit of security is going to tail off. What's going to happen is at some point, it doesn't make any sense to spend more money on security. So if you subtract benefit minus cost, you get a curve, an S-shaped curve. If you spend a little bit of money on security, it's a waste of time because it's not secure enough to make any difference. If you spend too much money on security, it's also a waste of money and a waste of time. And so, for example, in the left side of this curve here, you have a false sense of security. Is that if your objective is compliance, then you can be on the left side of the equation. But if your objective, if you have a business case where you've been hacked, you want to be on the right side of the equation. You want to have a positive ROI. So for example, secure E squared is generally on the left side of the equation, whereas something like a board ID chip or a smart card is generally on the right side of the equation. Here is our contact information. Again, I'm Mark Schaefer at GraniteKey, and here are my contacts over at Renesys. You can also go to Renesys' website to get information about the board ID chip. And I want to thank you all for the presentation. And remember that security is all about quality. It's about really understanding ROI. It's a business decision. And like everything else, it's really a mindset. And you can really enjoy the process of taking the desire to have quality, to have integrity, to have security, and bring it at a holistic level. Really, really take that level of integrity and bring it into your engineering, bring it into your management, and create a very secure system. That's what we do, and I'm very, very pleased to share that information with you. Thank you.